Hi, this is Don Exodus, and this video response is going to be outlining the reasons that you're wrong.
Eliminates the need for an intelligent designer.
Well, yes, that's true, but no more than the germ theory negates the need for an intelligent disease causer. What's the relevance?
If evolution is the product of an intelligent designer, then Genesis is wrong.
Anybody who spent very much time studying the Bible could tell you that. Genesis doesn't have one author, but several. This is evidenced by the two creation stories contradicting each other. They're symbolic, they're not meant to be taken literally. Things can be allegorically and metaphorically true without being literally true. You seem to be hung up on literalism, which at the same time removes all need for intellect. You just absorb, which, that's a no-no.
Some Christians like to embrace evolution because they can't defend creationism. They have a hard time defending it because they're befuddled by the so-called factual statements of evolution.
Yes, those pesky little facts sure do get in the way of being a creationist, don't they?
The reality is, evolution is still a theory. It's still a theory. We just had 200 years of evolutionary theory, and it's still a theory.
But the fact of the matter is, the cell theory is still a theory. We've had 300 years of it, and it is still a theory. We all know that cells don't exist. It's a fairy tale.
As a matter of fact, it's on the death rolls right now. Evolution is actually dying.
Funny. I wonder if you base it on the string of recent court cases prohibiting intelligent design from the classroom, or the thousands upon thousands of peer-reviewed papers published in the last year alone unanimously supporting evolution. Or, wait a minute, that doesn't make it.
And that's why, here on YouTube, instead of actually bringing forth evidence, empirical evidence, the evolutionist just resorts to ad hominem attacks on Christians. That's all you got. All you got is ad hominem personal attacks. I challenge you, atheistic evolutionists out there, please, give me the facts.
Well, I'm actually not an atheist, I'm a Christian, but I hope I can play too. First of all, let me start by saying that if I ever resort to ad hominem attacks, they're not to further my point whatsoever. They're merely to point out that A, you're wrong, and B, administer a public flogging for you making a video about something you're utterly ignorant about. You don't understand it yourself, let alone you're trying to educate other people on it. That's nauseating and deplorable, and you should get flogged for it, which, hi. Now on to the facts. I have to question exactly how hard you've looked. I've made several videos on the subject. I really don't know where to begin. We could start with the fossil record. Heck, let's talk about the thousands of transitional forms that there are. Check out my videos on the subject. We could talk about the pattern of endogenous retroviruses lining up seamlessly with every independent phylogenetic tree that's been constructed out of every single branch of biology. We could take a look at the fossil record and find out that the fossils are virtually never out of place, and I'm talking about strata, not depth. We never find human fossils with dinosaur fossils or anything like that. And no, that wasn't a human footprint. I know the fossil that you're thinking of. We could look at atavisms and the fact that chickens have genes to make teeth and whales have genes to make legs. How is that explainable other than by common descent? There are literally tons and tons and tons of evidences, and your ignorance of them does not mean that they don't exist. It's called the unifying theory of biology for a reason. It unites absolutely every discipline, and has just been tremendous and has led to the biological explosion that we've had in the past 100 years. In fact, the structure of DNA wouldn't have even been discovered had evolution not been used and evolutionary assumptions been made, which proved true, of course, to determine the structure of it. So, it happens. Check out the facts, and I'll be more than happy to help you with them if you're actually willing to listen. Oh, real quick, I forgot to mention the fact that virtually every gene in every organism on the planet, and I'm not counting horizontal gene transfer, line up seamlessly with the independent phylogenetic trees created based solely upon common descent. And this is the real important part that I spoke of earlier that has expedited research in biology. It's because I can take the genome from one organism and make evolutionary assumptions based upon it regarding the genome of a related or even somewhat distant organism. And I can apply research there, and of course it proves true.
Evolution is a fairy tale for adults. Okay, I've said it.
Right. Us being created from magical Jesus dust is much more plausible.
Now I'm a Darwinianac, and I believe in evolution. I believe I'm a product of random chance, and my mommy and daddy were hydrogen atoms, which popped into existence from nothing. Evolution has had a great deal of effect on communism. And Hitler was driven by Darwinian thought. That all of life has originated from the primordial slime, that we are nothing more than bacteria.
You know, perhaps part of your problem and why you're not accepting evolution is the fact that you know absolutely nothing about it. This is evidenced by virtually every word that comes out of your mouth being contradicted not only by common sense, but by evolutionary theory in general. Oh yes, I used the theory word, I'm sorry. Actually learn something about it before you go making a video on YouTube professing your ignorance to the world.
I believe that God created the world with a time date stamp on it. Not that it's billions and billions of years old. Frankly, there's so much controversy surrounding the dating system of the Earth. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, you know, kind of funny story. You know those time date stamps that you just talked about? Well, there's not just one. There are a couple hundred of them. And they all unanimously point independently to a date that actually is billions of years old. Kind of contradicting what you're saying. And that controversy going on about the dating, not in the educated scientific community. I mean, most of what you're hearing, which is, again, virtually everything coming out of your mouth, is ill-researched, illogical propaganda. Kindly provide me with some problems with the dating method, and other than, oh, well, before the flood, x-rays were different. I don't need to hear that shit. Thanks.
No one can really give me a solid good answer on the dating system of the world. But what I do have is human history and the Bible.
Right. I mean, who needs all that fancy independent science stuff when you have an over 2,000-year-old book which isn't meant to be read as a science book telling you how old the Earth is?
This is simple stuff here, people. This is simple stuff. We can understand this.
Yes, it is very simple. And that's undoubtedly why you're a creationist, because you have a simple mind and you like simple explanations. Anything requiring thought is too much effort for you. Who wants to learn about all this evolution science stuff? Because, you know what, it's hard and it's not for everyone. It's much easier to sit back, say, oh, Jesus did it, and accept that as a truth, regardless of what the facts or where they point. Yeah, and that's absolutely deplorable. I mean, if you want to sit back and say, well, I really don't care about the evidence, this is simple, I think I'll stick with it, fine. But again, don't go and try and misinform people on the internet about something you know absolutely nothing about. Simple minds like medieval answers. And yes, creationism is simple.
And I'm not debunking the... I love science. I love science. I love the modern conveniences of indoor plumbing. Okay? You know, if you got a headache, take an aspirin.
You know, isn't it interesting how modern science can put a man on the moon, split the atom, do all sorts of amazing things, yet get it so completely wrong when it comes to evolution? There's a little bit of an inconsistency there.
Irreducible complexity here. Things can't wait around until they achieve all the parts. If all the parts aren't simultaneously right there at the same time, this thing, the flagellum, cannot function.
Well, that's an interesting proposition that you have. Let's actually take a look at it. Now, evolution would contend that all those other pieces have additional functions and aren't necessarily just built for the flagellum. Now, special creation would contend, however, that they are all useless by themselves, all the individual parts. So we should test this and see if those component parts, if we take pieces away, whether or not they have additional functions. Because if they do, that's easily explainable by evolution. And let's use your example of the flagella. But what we actually find is when we take away 40 proteins, we're left with a flagellar base. Okay, that's part that the flagella actually anchors into the cell. And what do you know? It's the same thing, the exact same thing as a type 3 secretory system, which is essentially a molecular syringe. Again, thus confirming the prediction of evolution. So your argument for irreducible complexity that you use for special creation actually ends up supporting evolution.